Good. Hey, everybody. This is Isaiah Colton. I hope you guys are having an awesome day so far. And we are on part 3 of a series we're calling Geo-Farming Secrets. And I have Beatty Carmichael back here to help walk us through. And if you haven't been tuning into the series so far, we're going to post a link up where you can access the other videos of what we've been talking about, because we definitely don't want you to miss out on any part of this, because the biggest reason why is there's a lot of intricacy to make this work the right way, right, Beatty? Where if you're, it's like a formula. I think that's why we've been referring it to as like a system or a formula. And so you want to make sure if you're just catching the third part, make sure you go back and watch the first and second part. So that way, when the whole formula comes together, you can maximize your results. And where we left off last week, we were talking about low-cost ways to actually touch a farm and kind of cultivate the farm to generate more leads and listings from it. And Beatty, is there anything specific on this list? Do you want to go through the list one by one? It's completely up to you what you want to do from here.
Yeah, let me maybe just go through one by one, but most of them are just going to be kind of mentioning it and moving on. I think the most important thing is a lot of times people think geographic farming is real expensive, and it really isn't. You can do it. You can put your money to work, or you can put your time to work, or you can just be real effective otherwise. So we kind of covered some of these things, but if I can go back to kind of I want to hit one main thing on geographic farming is to always stay in front of your prospect. And the more you can stay in front of your prospect where they've actually met you, and they now have can put a face and a personality to you, and they start to trust you more and they do more business with you, or more likely. So that's where the first low-cost way of doing this is just door knocking, saying hello, meeting people. One of the things I might recommend, and we talked about this, is that Facebook community page. If there is one, if you're out door knocking, go on and get some door knockers. Promote the Facebook community page, have it talk about, the door knocker promote you as well. And if they're not there, at least leave it there. So now you're adding something of value. And if they are there, you can talk to them and lead them, the door knocker. And now it's something of value, because what people want to know is, do you care about them? They don't want you coming trying to make a sale, right? Does that make sense?
That does make sense. Does make a lot of sense.
And I think I mentioned this, but just for those people who may just be joining in on this call but missed the last one, the reason this is so impactful is one of our clients lives in a 1,500 home community, and at the time his Facebook community page only had like maybe 200 people there out of 1,500 homes. So the first thing he started to do, we were working with him on the postcard side, but he went door knocking and just put out flyers and door hangers about the Facebook community page, and instantly within a couple months got it up to like 800 people.
That's awesome.
And in 18 months, he went from having just a listing or two to controlling 22% of the listings.
That's huge.
Community. So that's something real special you can do. A third thing, do you have a comment, Isaiah?
Yeah, I think the Facebook community page is such an underutilized marketing tool.
Yeah.
Right. When you don't hear that brought up a whole lot when it comes to geo-farming. So I think if our viewers really check that out and figure out how to make that work, and it's a captive audience now. You can post stuff and it's back in front of them. It's that top of mind awareness that you always talk about.
Let me give some, if I can, maybe some etiquette rules for the Facebook community page.
Sure.
Because what people don't want is they don't want you coming and hawking your wares, okay? The Facebook community page is set up to be a community page, not a sales page.
Right.
So what you need to do is be sensitive to that, but you can have your cake and eat it too if you do it well. And so the way Nelson did it is everything he posted in the community page. So he had basically 2 kinds of posts. He would comment on people posting things, just so he's getting out there as a commenter, as a participant. And then he would also announce the real estate changes going on in that community, which is what they would have interest in. And believe it or not, Isaiah, the only real estate changes he would announce were those that he controlled, right?
Right.
So he would say, hey, here's a new listing about to come on the market.
That's
then,
awesome.
Hey, this is on the market. There's an open house on this house, okay? This house is just now under contract. So he would post those changes that are going on in their community. It just happens that he was the agent behind all of it. And so people loved seeing what was going on. And it wasn't a sales pitch. He was doing as kind of a community announcement. Does that make sense?
It does.
Um, Another thing you can do is 2-for-1 coupons. These are just something very simple. You can get them at local restaurants or other places. It's a way that the restaurant will give you these things for free because they're trying to drive in business. And as you hand them out, then it gives you people appreciate you for having given them that. Another thing may be if you have a park area, a lot of times these communities, they have some sort of a green space. And this is a real great way. It's low cost, but it really creates a interaction. Most communities want to be a part of a community. They want to get around their neighbors. And so buy an ice cream truck. I mean, rent one, don't buy it, but rent one to come to the park, or maybe a cupcake truck, and announce, hey, we're going to have a big ice cream social at the park this Saturday on these days. And announce it through all the different means. And what you're doing is you're just looking to bring crowds of people there. And when you do, stand by the ice cream truck. So as the parents come through with their kids, you can meet them. Have your little name tag that shows that you're with such and such real estate company. And now they connect the dots. You're the person I'm getting the postcards from. You're the person that put on the social. And now they get to meet you. And now what happens is you go from being a stranger to a friend that they've met. And the difference between a stranger and a friend that they met is a magnitude about 8 to 10 times more likely to do business with you.
Yeah.
So now think about this. This is why the face-to-face is so important. When I get a postcard in the mail, so I get a postcard from this guy named Bill Smithson, okay? This is actually one of our postcards that we send out. And if I've never met Bill, Bill is just another real estate agent. But once I met him at the park, or he's met me at the door, now every time I get this and I see his face, I go, oh, I remember Bill. I like him. And so it's a different type of impact that's really powerful. So that's the ice cream social, a cupcake giveaway, a barbecue at the park, any type of social. Now, if you don't have a green space, like I was in a 300 home community just a couple of years ago, we didn't have a green space. But what we did is we had a connecting road that was almost like a rarely traveled. So we would block it off, and we would have some sort of a street party social there. Okay.
Cool.
So think out of the box of where you can get the people together, and you be in the middle of all that.
Nice.
Isaiah, have you ever seen those magnets that you stick on the refrigerator that has the sports schedule?
Yeah, I do. Yep, absolutely. We got a couple of them on our calendar right now.
Yeah, most agents say, I don't, that's expensive to do. Have you ever heard that from agents, by the way?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because it costs what, maybe $1, $1.50, or $2, whatever it is. I don't know the cost. But let me suggest agents that do that get more money out of that investment than most any other investment, because here's the deal. That calendar is sitting on the refrigerator where everyone in that home, mom and dad, see it every day, multiple times a day as they go in and out of the refrigerator. What it does is it keeps your name in front of them.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because we have a couple of those on our fridge from different organizations, right? So it's good.
And so the more you can keep in front of them, then what happens is they just remember your name, because a lot of this is, I'll call it a name game. Whose name comes up first, okay? Yeah. And if you can keep your name in front of them, that's really what we're trying to do here. Another thing that you might try is a what I call the refrigerator magnet clip. I actually learned this at going to a NAR, one of the NAR conventions, and one of the mortgage companies was giving away these great clips. It's a magnet that you click on the refrigerator. And Isaiah, you've got little kids, right? Or at least one, right?
Yep.
Does your wife ever put pictures of and his,
all the time,
all the time, and things that maybe Josiah is doing in school? Okay, so we do the same thing, but they always fall down. You don't know where to stick it, and so a magnet clip with your name and photo on it is a perfect place, because it'll hold all kinds of things. It's just very useful. So that's another idea. Got this idea from a really cool coach. She was working with an agent in a lake district. They sold lake property, and that's usually vacation type stuff. And so they created a branded ice cream scoop. something that you're going to need when you're, having parties over, and it's branded to the real estate agent, but it keeps your name out there. Here's a couple other things. So a lot of times also in the communities, people want to know that you care more so than you're just there, okay? And so one of the things you can do to show sort of a caring side of yourself is community events that benefit someone else. So maybe a clothes drive for the homeless, or a food drive for the poor, or if you're in an area where people love their pets, which is more and more the case, maybe a pet food drive for the local humane society. Anything, or you can do a neighborhood garage sale, but all these things have one thing in common, is you have a central spot that everyone shows up at. They either bring stuff or they sell stuff, and you are involved with it. So as they're bringing things in, then you get to meet them. Now, I've got to tell you one last thing. It's the last thing. It's called the Marla Chapa approach. I do a podcast. Can I direct people to a podcast real quick?
Sure, of course.
Okay. I do a podcast called Get Sellers Calling You, and it's real estate marketing ideas. And I interview some people. You can, if you're listening to podcasts, just look up the channel Get Sellers Calling You, or you can just go to the website getsellerscallingyou.com, and you can listen to podcasts online. But I got to tell you the story of Marla Chapa. So Marla, because I interviewed her, and it's one of the most amazing stories, because have you ever seen, Isaiah, on like Britain's Got Talent or America's Got Talent? Some person comes out, they're very shy, the judges think this is just going to be a waste of time, and they just amaze everyone. Okay? Sort of like that diamond that has never been found. Well, that's the way Marla was. She was insecure. She had just gotten her real estate license. She lives in a community of 400 or 500 homes, and she's a single mom. She just recently divorced, and she didn't know anyone. So she wanted to get to meet people, and accidentally, within a year and a half, about 18 months to 2 years, she now controls 45% of all the listings in that community.
Wow.
And here's what she did. It was really brilliant. She didn't realize how brilliant it was. But once I heard, I said, oh, this is perfect. We've got to share this with the community. So what she did is she said, I want to have a get-together over at my house. She found a starving guitar player, said, hey, I'll pay you a few bucks if you'll come play. She bought some cheap wine and crackers and cheese. And then she started thinking, how do I get people who are strangers to want to come to someone's house? Because I wouldn't want to go to their house as a stranger, just kind of sit around and no one's interacting. It's kind of awkward. So she said, let's just make it a networking event. So she invited people. She said, if you have a home business, we're going to have a networking event at my house, and we're going to everyone share about their businesses. So what percentage of the people with a home business, Isaiah, do you think actually showed up at the house?
Probably higher than you think, right?
I would say close to maybe 100%, because they all want to sell their wares. So she had a group of about 25 or 30 people that showed up. They all had a great time. She started doing that once a month, but instantly she got the first listing from that meeting. And then she made a point that every time she or one of her friends or clients needed a product that networking group provided, she would always point them back to that person in that networking group. And now you have all these networkers constantly got their ears out, driving business back to you. So not only did she become 45% controlling agent in her own community, but she started getting other listings all over the place as well. And it didn't cost her but a couple of $100 or less than that just to put on one of these little parties. And she started doing it once a month. And
that's really interesting. Yeah, if you're a networker, that's an angle you want to go to. That's a really creative strategy to use, especially for farming an area. Yeah, I like it. That's good. All right, you want to move on? Hey, Tyler, how's it going? Hey. Good. So you want to move on to the next slide?
Yeah.
All right, cool. While we're doing that, just for folks, if you're hopping in and you haven't heard, this is a series of 3 videos like we're talking about. Tyler manages the division of Cole Realty, and there's no better place in my opinion to get geo-farming data, emails, phone numbers, addresses than their company. And he has a lot of wisdom and insight share kind of along the way, because he's been in that niche for so long now. How long now, Tyler?
15 years.
Yeah, 15. Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome. So just a quick introduction for those, Tyler's just joining us, for those of you that have not heard from Tyler yet. And Beatty, go ahead. What do you want to talk about next from here?
Yeah, I wanted to, we covered some of this stuff, but just for those people who may be joining in, I'd love to maybe recover quickly.
Yeah.
But there's some things you can do in marketing. So when you're doing geographic farming, it's just it's like you're in a battle, okay? You have foot soldiers here, you have air cover over here, you have artillery, and it's the combination of everything you do that causes you to win victory in obtaining the listings. And so one of the things that you do in geographic farming, and this can also definitely bleed over to any other marketing you do, such as with your personal contacts, is there are things that increase the results that you can get for the same amount of effort. And if you're going to be marketing, the general idea is that you track everything. And one of the things that we've done, I mentioned this earlier, we've done over 43 different tests where we've looked, tracked, measured results, and we say, okay, let's try again and see if we can beat those results. And even on our postcard designs, okay, you think, what's so difficult about a postcard design? Well, if you know what you're doing, the design of the postcard to convey the message you want to be conveyed is critically important. And we've actually, on our postcard designs, if I were to take a guess, we're probably somewhere in about 30 or 40 different designs that have gone in the past to get us to where we are now, everything looking to push that envelope further. So when you're tracking, always try to, here's the best way to do it. It's hard to just throw something out and see if it's successful or not. So you always want to do what's called an A/B test. Okay. So let's say you get a list of 1,000 addresses from Cole, and that represents 1 or 2 farms that you're going to be talking about, targeting. And then you're going to start marketing with some sort of marketing. At that point, the ideal is that you would take that 1,000 list and divide it into 2 groups. And you do one marketing piece to one group and one to the other for enough time that you can determine which one produces more results. And then what produces more results, you then focus on that and then do another test. So the things that I want to share real quickly are just some high-level things that we have found that causes results to increase dramatically. Okay.
And Tyler, at any point with all the training and coaching that you've done that you want to chime into from what you've seen, feel free to. Okay.
Oh no, I'm taking it all in and taking notes. To be honest with you, it's always good to hear
different perspectives, right?
Point. Yeah, I love it.
Awesome.
Yeah,
go ahead, Beatty.
When I share this stuff, I have to be honest. I feel like I'm slicing my wrist and giving my lifeblood away, because this is my life that I've spent 22 years in learning and applying. So this is really from the heart. But I do want to share it because it has
a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of energy, right?
Yeah.
Is on these 6 bullet points, right?
So, a whole lot. Oh, I got to tell you a story on that, because this is kind of sometimes we learn enough that we think we know it all. And sometimes we really don't. Okay, so I've got to tell you this story, and I think it's a real story. It may just be made up. But this guy named John has been at this company for a couple of years. He comes into the boss man and says, "Hey boss, I've got good news and bad news." So the boss says, "Well, give me the good news first." He says, "Boss, I'm going to start my own business." And boss man says, "Hey, that is so great. I'm so proud of you, and I wish you the best of success." He said, "What's the bad news?" He said, "The bad news, boss, is I'm going to compete directly against you, doing everything I've learned from you."
Well, that's definitely a true story.
Yeah, and then
for sure.
And so the boss man says, "Well, just remember 2 things." And John said, "What's that?" He said, "Number 1, I taught you everything you know. Number 2, I haven't taught you everything I know."
Wow, that's good.
So I'm teaching you what I can, but there's a lot of other stuff underneath the surface of just experience that goes a long ways.
Yeah, that's so true.
So in terms of some of the things that we found that are the most significant, there's something called reverse print and regular print. And if you're looking at the screen, if you look at the top of the screen where there's a banner that says geographic farming and how to make real money with it, that's what we call reverse print. Reverse print is where you have a dark background and light color text. Usually the text is in white, okay, but sometimes it's just a light color. Regular print is like what you see underneath where it says lessons we've learned about increasing marketing results. That's is usually a very light color background with dark print. Okay, so what we're talking about is what color is the print versus the background. And a lot of times when you go to a designer to design your marketing piece, whether it's an online ad or whether it's a postcard or a flyer, designers love to make everything look pretty, but pretty is not always effective, okay?
Yeah.
And what we have found is when you use reverse print, people can't read it as well, and so it reduces the results. And so here's a test that we did. We had an offer. So in marketing, you have an offer that you're trying to get a direct response on if you're doing, trying to create leads, let's say. And so we had an offer that was generating very consistent results. And we wanted to test 2 different designs on the postcards. One was reverse print and the other was regular print. So it was the identical offer. We did this in multiple states throughout the nation in a perfect split A/B test. And what we found is that offer that had regular print outperformed the identical offer that had reverse print by 850%, 8.5 times.
That's amazing.
Okay? So it's dramatic, the increased results, and the reason is readability. We have been trained in reading newspapers, reading magazine articles, even reading news reports online, is that you're reading dark print on a white background. And so that's our training. Then the second split test that we did, or maybe not the split, the second one, but just kind of in a sequence of things, is a lot of times people would say, well, jumbo postcards outperform regular postcards.
I've had this debate with so many different people and going back and forth and on this especially early on when I was getting into geo-farming. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, in fact, let me ask Tyler, have you, because with all of the stuff that you guys do with mailing lists, I'm sure there's a lot of feedback or things that maybe y'all have done or seen in terms of postcard size. What have you guys been finding?
Yeah, well, and this is why I'm taking so many notes, Beatty, is that, this isn't something we really get into the weeds much, right? I mean, you're the expert. Yep. So what we say is go find a company like yourself,
right,
that can steer you and tell you about those things. Hey, we're the data.
Yep.
And then we talk about, hey, a multi-channel approach. So you mail, and then to get even higher results, call, email, door knock.
Yep.
So that's why I'm taking notes right now.
Yeah.
Well, good. Well, hopefully everyone's taking notes because this stuff will really make you money.
Yep.
So what we did is we did a split marketing test, right? And so we did it first on an offer. What we're doing is we're trying to get someone to identify themselves as a seller, someone who's thinking about selling, because we kind of perfected that model. So I kept hearing from my clients, well, you use regular size postcards? Well, that doesn't work. Jumbo is better. And so why do you say that? You know what they kept telling me?
It's bigger.
That's what I keep hearing other people say, right? It's and so I said, well, I listen to what other people say, but I want to test it and see if it's real. So we tested this, and we tested it 2 or 3 times because we didn't believe the results the first time. So, well, this can't be right because it makes sense jumbo should outperform. So we test again, and we test again, and every time the results are always the same. When you're doing direct response and you have a good message with a good headline, okay, that's the key, a good headline.
Yeah.
Then it makes no difference. And that's what our data, there was no difference between jumbo and a regular size postcard in a direct response, except for Florida. Florida, we had a 20% increase in results. And the only thing I can gather is maybe they're older, and so they like bigger print for older eyes. Maybe, I'm not sure what it is, but that was the only thing there. Then we did another thing. Have you ever seen, any of you guys seen, I think Craig Proctor he didn't pioneer this, but he promoted it. Sort of what I call the ugly card. Bright yellow, got a message, okay?
Oh yeah.
You familiar with that?
Well, I've done it before actually. I've done the ugly card actually in the yellow letter type of approach for dealing with different types of homeowners to attract investment properties before, and so I do have some experience with that.
Yeah.
As well.
And well, that's actually how we started in 2012, because we took. Let me go back to before real estate agents. Yep. I was working with small business owners, and we created these ads that were really highly effective. And we found that the bright, bold yellow with dark print, ugly as all get out, they would grab the highest results because they stood out. Okay, when we tried to make the cards pretty, we reduced results.
So quick story on that. I've done some marketing for some financial planners that held seminars, and so it was my job to drive them to get to a seminar. The best response that I ever had was on a lightly yellow printed background that was kind of like, I would never do it normally, with black print in the room would be packed if I used that. If I didn't use that, the results would go down.
Isn't that amazing?
Yep.
Different people do respond differently.
Yep.
But here's what's interesting. This is why you always want to test. For the first year or year and a half, we stayed with the ugly yellow card. Bold headline, okay? I don't know if we'll talk about headlines, but that's real important, by the way. Make a note. Maybe on the next call we'll talk about headlines.
Yeah, headline is everything. Yeah.
But we use the ugly card, and then we said, because our client base, real estate agents, wanted something pretty. And they said, well, don't you have prettier cards that look more professional? You know, I want to look professional before my clients. So our standard response was, ugly yellow gets more results. What do you want, results or to look pretty? Okay. And but we finally acquiesced, and we said, well, let's try this and see what happens. And here's what we found. It's really interesting. We found that when we went to a prettier looking card that maintained the elements to allow us to do the direct response, that pretty outperformed ugly yellow by 250%, 2.5 times.
Wow.
And so we learned something. Your audience determines what you need to do, and that's why you always test, because one audience is always different than the other.
Well, it makes sense from just dealing with the psychology of a homeowner, right? Is, a home it's a big investment. It's it's something that has some prestige to it, and who wants to work with a realtor that doesn't have it's kind of like a branding thing. Real estate and branding go very, very much hand in hand. You don't want to walk into a dumpy office working with a realtor, So right. I think that's kind of what you're saying, right? That's probably why. I don't know if I'm explaining it best.
I think it's it. So if you look at all of the things that you test and what happens, it's all based on what your market is accustomed to. Okay. And if your market is accustomed to reading regular print instead of reverse, you'll get a higher result. And I think your market is accustomed to having prettier looking postcards. So there's an element of trust that is extended and inferred upon that agent if the card is pretty. Does that make sense? The
homeowner you're trying to attract, if you're in a luxury neighborhood, you better have a darn good looking card.
Yep. Hey, look, let me share something else about this. I'll put this in male, female terms for at least the guys here, and can relate, and hopefully the women too. But when you look at attractiveness, at some point you have someone who is unattractive, whether they're male or female. When they're in that level of attractiveness, once you cross that attractiveness level, there's not much discerning difference between attractive or super attractive. They're either attractive or not. And the rest of it is just gradients. And what we have found I don't know if that makes sense. Let me try to tie it back into pretty. What we have found with pretty is once you cross the threshold of what says this is a good looking card, then to go way above that threshold doesn't necessarily increase results. Maybe a little bit, but you give up so much in the
it's the sales the sales copy is that gotta balance it out with the sales copy. I think that's what you're talking about in the last video.
Yeah.
Which you mentioned the headline. The headline is, I have a ton of experience with headlines just from online marketing and postcards, and the headline will make or break the campaign every single time.
Can I tell a story on headlines?
Sure.
Okay. So it's not on this list. I was looking. So actually, let me pull my data up real quick, because this was really interesting. We tested a long headline versus a short headline. And let me see if I've got this here. Drop letter, short. Yeah. Okay. So a long headline is, so first off, the importance of the headline is it causes someone to stop and read. If you send out a postcard and they don't stop and read it, it's wasted.
Yep.
So you've got to have something that grabs enough attention that it drives their attention.
Mm-hmm.
And so the headline is actually responsible for as much as probably 80% of your results.
Yes.
And
100%.
And there's a guy named, so if you look at Craig Proctor, you look at Dane Jackson, you look at Beatty Carmichael, you look at a lot of these other copywriters that I'm looking over here, trying to read the names, I can't without glasses. They all kind of go back to a couple of key people, and one of them is a guy named Jay Abraham back in the 1980s.
Yeah, Jay's kind of, he paved the way.
He paved the way on a lot of what we do, and I think he has spawned a lot of marketers. But there's one test that he did, and I want to share just the impact of this, because this applies to what you do in selling houses. It's all about getting someone to read your copy. So at this time, this is in the early 80s, gold and silver was going through the roof financially. So there was a company that was selling gold and silver in the Wall Street Journal. Their ad was saying that, they actually had financial institutions that would invest 2/3 of the cost of the gold and silver to allow you as an investor to buy it. So their ad said 2/3 bank financing on gold and silver. That was the headline. And then the ad copy explained it. They got enough results to make things happen, but then they hired Jay Abraham. And Jay started playing with headlines and testing. And he found one headline that outperformed everything else by 20 times. So in other words, for the same money that they spent in their marketing, they generated 20 times more sales.
Yep.
And the only difference with the headline is it was more descriptive. And here's what it said. If gold is selling for $300 an ounce, give us just $100 an ounce. We'll buy you all the gold you want. And what the headline does is it grabs the attention of the person and helps them understand there's something of great value here. So the more you can articulate the value in the headline in a nutshell, then the more they're going to read your copy and then they're going to be persuaded. That's why the headline is so
When it comes to time too, and if you're building a postcard, and this is why I recommend you hire Beatty to do this. But if you think you want to try to do it on your own for whatever reason, one of the most common mistakes is you go back to the 80-20 rule, where you have professionals spending more time on every other part of the postcard. They're spending 80% of the time on every other part of the postcard, and only 20% of their time on the heading. And you should flip-flop it. You really should be spending as much time as it takes and doing as much testing as it takes to make sure that headline's right. Because you can I've had campaigns that I've run where I've had amazing sales copy and a poor headline, and it completely failed. And I took the same copy, didn't change the copy, but I just changed the headline, and it dramatically changed the results. So I can't say enough about that. What you're talking about, Beatty, is it's all about the headline.
I hired a copywriter. So one of the other products I've sold years back, I hired a copywriter, paid him $10,000 to help me write their copy. I'm a good copywriter, but I knew I needed some extra edge. And the thing that impressed me is, first thing he said, well, what's the offer?
That's right.
But don't you want to know how the product works? He says, no, I want to know the offer. Because the offer determines the headline, and the headline determines if people are going to read it or not. And
That's right.
It all started with what the offer was. I thought that was an interesting.
Yeah, that's very. And I learned from a gentleman by the name of Russell Brunson. He's absolutely exploding right now. I recommend everyone look him up. He got Entrepreneur of the Year. He went from zero to $100 million in 3 years without any venture funding.
Wow.
And he is a dynamic marketer, and that's exactly what he talks about. He says, you build your offer first. Well, first, you build the offer first, and then you create the headline. He says the same thing. So, yeah.
Back on the list,
Yep.
so we can stay on time. A couple of things to talk about. One is called the font style. Okay, this makes an impact, and it can make a big impact depending on who your audience is. So there's basically two style of fonts. One is called serif. Serif is where you have a little curly Q at the end, like you have a T with a curly Q like this. Okay, an easy way to understand serif is it's like Times Roman. And then you have what's called a sans serif. Sans means without. So sans serif is the font that we have on the screen right now. Lessons we've learned. Everything is straight up and down. There's no little curly cues. And so if you're targeting, so there was a study done in the 1980s that was trying to determine serif versus sans serif. And what they found is that the reading comprehension level with the serif font was 500%. That's 5 times more than the comprehension of the sans serif. And I think you mentioned on our last call that you've just written a book, Isaiah, and that your publisher is suggesting that you do it in serif font.
Yep. That's right.
And that's why. Now, I think this is also, again, this goes back to what is your market accustomed to. So if you're dealing with what I'll call the 45 and over crowd, then they're more accustomed to have been reading newspapers and magazines and reading books, many things on printed, and almost everything in the printed paper is a serif font. So, so when you change the font, it's really hard because their brain can't grasp it. They read the letters, but it's just really hard, okay? If you're targeting the millennial crowd and anything kind of in between, under 45 maybe, the more you go down, more of their experience is they're always reading on their phone, right? And their phone is usually a sans serif. So I bet if we were to do this test again with a wide enough audience that we could discern,
that'd be really interesting.
That if I'm targeting the younger crowd, their sans serif would probably be a better font. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that'd be a very interesting test.
Yeah. So most of my clients and their customer base, which is homeowners, they're the older crowd, so I'm not going to do that test. You're welcome, but let me know the results.
All right, sounds good.
The last thing is what I call slippery slope. I've got to tell you, if you want to write copy, this is the best book. Once you've learned, can I promote 2 books that are really the best in marketing? Okay.
Yep.
So I've read a lot and I've heard a lot, and there's 2 books that I would recommend. One, if you just want to understand the whole concept of marketing and what drives results and how to technically apply it in your own marketing copy, it's a book called Monopolize Your Marketplace by Richard Harshaw.
Okay.
I think it's still in print. It may not be. But then the best book I've read on just understanding all these nuances of writing copy that causes people to respond is a book called, I'm reading it, it's called The Advertiser Copywriter's Handbook. And it's by Joe Sugarman. And just really fabulous stuff. But he brought out this concept number 6 called the slippery slope. And it makes a lot of sense. So the idea of this is when you're writing copy, the only thing that's going to persuade someone is what you say. So if they don't read what you say, you can't persuade them. So if you want to persuade them, then there's a logical progress of copy. You have the headline, which is designed to grab their attention. And the purpose of the headline is to get them to read the subhead. And the subhead then better develops the headline and causes them to want to read the first sentence. And the first sentence continues the concept of the headline and subheadline, gets them to want to read the second sentence and all the way down. And so you have this slippery slope. You want to start them at the stop, and every word in every sentence is designed to get them to the next spot. And so what we find in this, and this is something that I found real interesting. Back before we started working directly and exclusively with realtors, we were working with independent business owners. We had a voicemail message they used in advertising. And what we found is this. The message was always about a 3-minute message. It was an advertising. Once someone listened to 30 seconds, they would listen to the entire message. It's that first 30 seconds that they would either cancel out or not. This is the same thing that Joe Sugarman found out with the slippery slope. That once someone hits about 1/4 of the ad, 2/3 of the people who hit 1/4 will read the entire thing. So the most important part of what you're doing is you're getting them, trying just to get them engaged. And this is where, maybe it's on the next, go to the next page. I think we talked about a drop letter. Okay, yeah, good. So this has, yeah, okay. So let's talk about, first, how much time do we have? Because we may need to start.
Claire, how much time we have? About 15 minutes. Yep.
About 15 minutes. Okay, great.
Yep.
So I think we can cover some of this pretty well. So, so number 8, let me jump straight to number 8 real quick, because we're talking about the slippery slope. Number 8 is what's called a drop letter. And a drop letter is, I don't have an example here. Do you have an example of one of my postcards on the slide deck that we can pull up?
Let me see if I can go back and see here. Scroll back here.
That was a great picture you just passed, by the way.
There's three
great pictures.
That's right. Let's see here. No, I don't think we have a sample of the card.
Well, all right. So so let me see if I can just describe what a drop letter is. So, in fact, here's kind of a drop letter. I don't know if you can see this, but the first letter right here, we actually have the guy's name, and we have it in larger print. Typically, a drop letter is where you have a real large letter, it's all capitalized, that then begins the beginning of the word, and it stands out above everything else. What they find is that drop letter actually increases readership engagement by 20%. It kind of says like, hey, look at me, start here, and it draws the eye there, and then it starts to get them engaged. So you can increase, and all these things, they add to each other, okay? They increase in results. Here's something else we tested. It was really interesting. In some areas, negative sells better. In other areas, positive sells better. Let me see if I can put this in business terms. Negative is risk. As a business owner, we're always managing risk. You know, here's the 5 things that can kill your business if you're not careful. Okay, as a business owner, I want to read that. But as a homeowner, if I were to put here the 5 things that you can lose money on selling your house, they don't want to hear that. And so what we did is we used basically the same offer, but we phrased one offer in a negative direction, and we phrased the other offer in a positive direction. Negative is, here's a simple example. The 10 most costly mistakes you can make in trying to sell your house and what you can do to avoid them. Same offer in positive, the 10 most profitable things you can do in selling your house and how you can make more money with it. Okay. Negative versus positive. What we found is that positive offer outperformed a negative offer by 800%. What this tells us is those homeowners, they want to know what they can do to get more money and to be happy and cheerful, not to avoid risk.
Right.
I thought that was really interesting. Number 9.
Makes sense.
Yeah, number 9 is the short versus long headline. Everyone says, you know, shorter is better, right? Not necessarily so.
Not necessarily, no.
So we did I forget the test that we did on this one. So let me go back to another test that's real clear on my mind. Years back, we did a test. So the business owners we're working on, they were looking for opportunity leads. And one of the headlines was, tired of living paycheck to paycheck? ? And we tested that against, are you tired of living paycheck to paycheck? ? And are you tired outperformed at a significant rate, simply tired of living paycheck to paycheck. So what happens is this, it's sort of like the example with J. Abraham with selling gold and silver. The more you can fully develop the entire thought in your headline, the more the headline's going to respond for you.
Yep.
And so when you take time to write a longer headline that better conveys the full thought, you're going to increase your response rate. And what we found is we had a really good headline that was working, and we added more words to it to try to articulate it better, and it increased results by 25%. We thought that was a significant increase.
That's awesome.
Let's see. Another thing that was really interesting we did is, and sometimes you'll see postcards. Most of the real estate postcards out there, you don't have to worry about this, but we're all, what we do is all driven by copy. And we had a postcard that was kind of broken up. I wish I had an example, but it had a section over here. Then it had a section over here and a section over here, and each section kind of stood alone. What we found is it seemed like people weren't really engaging on the postcard. So we changed the design to allow the flow so that it would flow all the way down without any stops.
I've made that mistake before.
Yeah.
That's why I'm shaking my head.
Yeah.
So
you never want to get your prospect to stop, okay? And this is why you'll see a lot of times in good copy,
they feel like they have to turn a page to the book. It seems weird, but like they feel mentally like they, even though they're just, because there's a line there, they're turning a page like, oh yeah, I read part of it, I don't need to read the rest. Like, yeah,
or line there, or even just a period or a dot or an that says, okay, this is now stopped.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
But if you put a dot, continue
then
below,
they'll keep reading. Yep.
Then they'll keep reading. Yeah.
Yep.
It's really interesting. Let's see, testing the list. Number 11, this is real important. This is where, if you go back to what we talked about at the beginning of this session of geographic farming, the list, identifying where to target. The list that you target is 40% of the success that you'll have. If you have a great offer, a great message, and you're targeting homeowners that have no interest in selling, you're not going to go anywhere. So testing the list is important. So one of the things that we like to do is, and there's some things you can do to kind of test, but you really want to make sure that you get a good list. And a good list is not just a good name and address.
Yeah, that's where we come in, right? That's where we come in, combined with Cole, with what Cole does with our artificial intelligence, and also our scrubbing tool that we use. In my opinion, I don't think you can get a better list.
I don't think so too. With what you were sharing, that of those people you identify as most likely to sell, 25% go on the market in 30 days.
Yep.
That is amazing.
Yep.
And what you're doing, and so let's talk about that for a second. So I'm giving you, let's say, a list. I go buy the list from Cole, 1,000 addresses. I give it to you, and then you narrow it down to maybe 200 or 300 most likely to sell.
Yep. And then that's per 100. Anywhere between 20 to 25% will be either ready to buy or sell within 30 days. And
so when you're marketing to that list, that's the list that drives towards. Can I share some data you may not be aware of on the rest of that? Okay.
Sure.
So you take that group that for every 100, 20 to 25% are going on the market in 30 days. Here's what we've seen with similar type of prospects is 20 to 25% within 30 days. But if you look at a whole, 1/3 of them usually go on the market within the first year. And another third go on the market usually within about that second year.
That makes sense.
So this is you don't abandon those that don't go on the market in the first 30 days. This is why, like what we've been talking about on some of the stuff with postcard marketing, you stay in front of them all the time. Keep touching.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because, for our clients that maybe you're just watching this for the first time maybe, and you're like, how do I attack this list? The reason why we do the ranking hot, warm, and cold, and the ranking is constantly changing. And we like to utilize Cole and some of the other vendors that we work with to making sure that we're always getting updated information, is because as you see that ranking change and you continue to market to them, it helps you understand what's happening with them. And I'm glad you brought that up. Don't abandon the warm leads. Don't abandon even the hot ones that maybe aren't ready to go yet. You got to keep marketing to them strong, because eventually there's going to be a percentage from that move into that top of the bottom of the funnel that are really ready to go.
Can I share an interesting data point that will resonate with you, Isaiah?
Sure.
So you remember working? You've worked with expired leads, right?
Oh yeah. Made a lot of money on expired leads. Yes.
So most people, here's how they work expired leads. See if this makes sense.
Yep.
I get an expired list. I pound the phone on them, maybe drop by, and if I haven't gotten the business from them within a month, I've abandoned them and I've picked up the next one who's just expired, because when someone expires, those that are going on the market are most likely coming on the market back immediately.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So to that point, Beatty, one of how we work expireds, or how I train to work expireds, is you want to hit the new ones for sure, and make sure you're building out your 30, 60, 90 day pipeline. But then what we also do is we load up a separate list in a separate campaign, and we pull 2 years back or a year back, because nobody's going after them.
Yep.
And we draw so many listings out of the old expired listings. It's not even funny.
That's what we
don't have any competition.
Yeah,
so,
that's the point I wanted to make, because this is so important. This goes back to the list, okay?
Yep.
It goes back to the list that you do in finding most likely to sell.
Yep.
It goes to every list, because what you'll find is there's a dynamic that's consistent. I remember years back, people would always say, well, Beatty, people in my city are different.
Yeah.
I said, no, they're not. Everyone's so different, they're all the same. And this
Yep.
is what we find. I did a study with one of our clients who works with expireds. By the way, at the
How
time
long?
I was...
Sorry, 5 minutes. Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Let me finish this story, and then we'll finish things. So he was getting like 2-3 listings a month from expired listings who called him. He never called them. What he did is he put them on a postcard drip campaign, and his average expired listing was somewhere around 9 months expired. And so we did a study.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We pulled all of the expireds and withdrawn from market over like a 3-year period or 4 or 5-year period. We started to analyze it, and here's what we find. There's a half-life, and I think it resonates very clearly to what you're probably going to find with the most likely to sell. Half of the people that would relisted within 30 days. Of the remaining, half of those people relisted by the end of 90 days. Of the remaining, half of them relisted by the end of the first year, and of the remaining half, the remaining listed in that second year. And so you have this trickle-down effect that if you stay on top of constantly targeting, you will find tons of business that everyone else
so much.
abandoned.
Yeah, they're
That's
abandoning
the
it.
easy.
Yep.
So I think we got to wrap up. So let me let you start wrapping.
Yeah, Tyler, I want to maybe there's people that already do this. I'd love to, if it's not there though, I'd love to explore a way to take an old expired list and then use your services to find emails and phone numbers, and then rank. And then that way we could apply our ranking, our run technology to that old expired list. And I think that would be an insanely awesome. It'd be an awesome campaign to go after and
don't
attack.
Forget our postcard marketing to target that campaign.
And then you got the you got the postcard marketing along with the automation. Absolutely. You get imagine this, if you're watching this, imagine having old expires, nobody's hitting them. We get updated emails, phone numbers, postcards, and then you rank them so you know which ones are hot, warm, and cold. Well, yeah, that sounds like an awesome campaign to me. So let's explore that. We'll maybe we could do a video, or maybe we can do a session on how we put this campaign together for our viewers. Maybe we can talk offline and how to coordinate a campaign like that, and different types of campaigns and with different lists. And I think that'd be a lot of fun to do. Maybe we can do a couple more segments here, guys, and say, okay, now we've talked about this. What are different ways you can farm, right? How do you work the different lists and get more specific about the type of campaigns? So does that sound good to everybody?
Absolutely.
Doing something like that? Good. Awesome. So we got a couple other things, Beatty. There, family photo. I don't think we need to talk a whole lot about why that makes sense. Like, it's the personal touch, right? It's I'm a real person. Here's my family. It's got to be insane.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Guys doing geographic farming, been mailing them for 2 years. One postcard in the second year performed half of all the listings, and the only difference, he had a family photo on it. So even B2B sales, I had all my sales reps put a family photo at the beginning of the slide. Dramatically different as far as the rapport that was built in the beginning of the call and how the rest of the call went just by having a personal family photo. Huge difference. So with that, guys, I think this is some awesome information, Beatty. I'm excited. Can we put my slide up where people can
learn more absolutely. About it? Yeah. Is that right at the beginning or is that at the end?
Yeah, at the beginning. It's the one with the most handsome photo that you passed.
Okay. Actually, we got it right here too.
Okay. Yeah. Down there.
So rapsuccess agentdominator.com, and you can go there and essentially they enter their information and then somebody will reach out to them. Is that how it'll work?
That's exactly right.
Okay, and you set up a one-on-one strategy session and figure out the best campaign from there. And essentially, if you're looking to work with ranking or anything else like that, you can go to 10xmylistings.com. We'll go over a strategy session. By default, you get the cold data by working with us anyway, and then we will also be able to mention and end up referring you to Beatty as well. So either direction you want to go, you'll make sure you get all the information about the ranking, the data, and the postcard game plan. And I'm looking forward to our next sessions and how we can actually lay out specific campaigns for specific lists. That'll be a lot of fun. So we'll see you next time.
Have a great day.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye.